Here we are, ready for another chapter in Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix. Excuse me. So we're on chapter 21. In February, Dad got the letter from the government forbidding him from trying to grow anything indoors. It has come to our attention that you have been purchasing excess amounts of plastic pipe, such as is used in the germination, cultivation, and development of vegetative matter in an interior structure, the letter began. Due to the preponderance of such agricultural methods in the cultivation of illegal substances, we order you to cease and desist immediately. Luke read the letter at supper after everyone else in the family had had a stab at trying to figure out what it meant. Somehow, after reading all the big books that Jen had loaned him, he didn't find the fancy words so daunting. They want you to stop, Luke said. They're scared you're going to grow something illegal. And this part, he pointed at the letter, although everyone else was at the table several feet away, and he was in his usual spot on the stairs. This part, where they say, render all such materials for our education, that means you have to turn over all the stuff you bought, and they'll decide if they're going to fine you or not. The rest of the family looked at Luke in amazement. Then Mark started giggling. Drugs? He said. They think you're going to grow drugs? Dad flashed him a look of pure disgust. Think it's funny? We'll see what you think next year when your feet grow and we don't have money for new shoes. Mark stopped laughing. We'll get by, Luke's mother said quietly. We always have. Dad shoved back from the table. Why didn't I get a permit? He asked no one in particular. Maybe if I just get a permit. By then, Luke had read the rest of the letter. They don't give out permits for hydroponics, he said. This says it's always illegal. This time he only got a glare from Dad. Luke felt his father's disappointment, and seeing his parents so worried about money, made a small voice whisper in the back of his head. Maybe if they didn't have you, they could afford everything they want. But he didn't eat that much, and all his clothes were hand-me-downs from Matthew and Mark. And how much could it cost to heat his attic room? Sometimes he found ice crystals on the chair he sat in to watch the neighborhood. He tried to ignore the voice. What bothered him more was that without the hydroponics idea to keep him busy, Dad barely left the farm for the rest of the winter. Luke made it over to Jen's only once in all of February and twice in March, when Dad began driving around looking for the best seed corn prices. But each time, Jen greeted him with big hugs and acted genuinely thrilled to see him. Her tantrum in January seemed forgotten. One day, the two of them made a huge mess at the Talbot's kitchen baking cookies. Won't your parents mind? Luke asked when Jen scolded him for attempting to clean their flour fingerprints off the cabinet and refrigerator and stove. Are you kidding? I want to preserve this. They'll be thrilled to see any sign of domestication on my part, Jen said. Another time they played board games all morning, sprawled out on the floor of the Talbots' family room. The third day, they just spent the whole time talking. Jen kept Luke enthralled with stories of places she'd been, people she'd met, things she'd seen. When I was little, Mom used to take me to a play group that was all third children, Jen said. She giggled. The thing was, it was all government officials' kids. I think some of the parents didn't even like kids. They just thought it was a status symbol to break the population law and get away with it. What'd you do at playgroup? Luke asked. Played, of course. Everybody had a lot of toys, and one of the kids had a dog he brought with him sometimes, and we all took turns feeding it dog biscuits. These people had pets too? Luke said incredulously. Well, they're all barons, Jen said. Luke frowned. He slid down in the soft couch, so different from anything in his own house. My dad says that when he was little, just about everybody he knew had pets. He had a dog named Bootsy and a cat named Stripe. He talks about them all the time. Why'd the government make pets illegal? Oh, the food thing, Jen said. She took a chocolate chip cookie from the pack they were sharing and waved it for emphasis. Without dogs and cats, there's more food for humans. My dad says if it weren't for the barons breaking the law, lots of species would have gone extinct. Luke looked at the cookie in his own hand. So now was he supposed to feel guilty about eating food that should have gone to animals as well as to other people? Jan saw his expression. Hey, don't go dopey on me, she said. It's all a scam, remember? There's more than enough food in the world, especially now that there aren't enough babies being born. What? Luke asked. Well, besides passing the population law, the government went on this big campaign to make women think it was something evil to get pregnant and have kids. They put up posters all over the city with things like, "Who's the worst criminal?" under a picture of a pregnant lady and, I don't know, some tough-looking crooks. And then if you read the whole sign, it'd tell you the woman was the worst of all. Another one. It had a picture of a huge pregnant belly with the label, "Ladies, do you want to look like this?" And women aren't allowed to go anywhere once they get pregnant. So now my dad told me there are so few babies being born that the population's going to be cut in half. Luke shook his head, confused as usual. So why doesn't the government take down the signs and let people have as many babies as they want? Jen rolled her eyes. Luke, you've got to quit thinking that this makes sense, Jen said. It's the government, remember? That's why we've got to have the rally. Luke changed the subject as quickly as he could. What do women do if they can't go anywhere the whole time they're pregnant? I don't know about humans, but pigs take almost 4 months to have a baby. Do the women stay home all that time? Hiding like us, you mean? Jen asked. But she took the distraction. Lots of them pretend they're just getting fat. My mom said she went shopping the day before I was born and nobody noticed. But that's my mom and shopping. And then she was off on a tale about her mother taking Jen shopping in a city 10 hours away just because she'd heard a store sold good purses there. That's probably the reason my brothers don't turn me in, she said. If she didn't have me, my mother would drag them around shopping. Can you see those two gorillas with shopping bags? Jen did an impression, walking around with her arms dragging from imaginary loaded down bags. Even though Luke had only seen her brothers from a distance, he caught the resemblance and laughed. Your brothers would never turn you in, he protested, would they? Of course not, Jen agreed. They love me. She hugged herself mockingly and flopped back onto the couch beside Luke. Anyhow, they wouldn't be smart enough to figure out how to turn me in without getting the rest of the family in trouble. What about your brothers? They're not stupid, Luke said defensively. Or do you mean, would they ever betray you? Jen narrowed her eyes, truly curious. Not now, necessarily, but say years from now, if your parents were dead and it wouldn't hurt anybody but you, and they'd get lots of money for it? It was a question Luke had never considered, but he knew the answer. Never, he said, his voice cracking with earnestness. I can trust them. I mean, we grew up together. It was strange how he could be so sure because they barely took time even to tease him anymore. Matthew's getting serious with his girlfriend and spent every spare moment at her house. Mark had suddenly gone basketball crazy and talked Dad into nailing an old tire rim to the front of the barn for a hoop. Luke could hear him outside throwing balls late into the night. No matter how certain he was of their loyalty, Luke sometimes felt like his brothers had outgrown him. He missed them. But it didn't matter. He had Jen now. Luke kept Jen from talking about the rally the rest of the day, and they didn't even go near the computer. They just had fun. He crawled back to his house a few hours later, thinking that he didn't mind at all anymore having to hide. He could go on this way forever, as long as he got to visit Jen. The leaves would soon come back on the trees, and he'd feel even safer on his trips to her house. And when planting season started, Dad would be out in the fields all day, and Luke could see Jen all the time. But April came before planting season. So with April coming, that's when they're doing the rally. So we'll have to find out, do Jen and Luke become involved with the rally or do they hide? We'll find out later. Have a good day.